Hello, lovely people, and welcome to this week's Friday Fix. Today, I want to talk about getting honest with people when you stop drinking. Is honesty the best policy? Is it a good idea to tell people openly and honestly that you've had this problem and you've now decided to stop drinking, and to just be completely open with people that you're meeting, people that you're socializing with, your friends, your family? Is honesty the best policy? This is something that some of you are talking about in the Go Get Sober Facebook group. And so it's a topic that I wanted to address today. And the first thing I would say in answer to that is to have a think about where your focus is when you first stop drinking. And what I mean by that is when we're drinking, excuse me while I put my cup of tea down, when we're drinking, we engage in behaviours and actions that make us feel guilty and ashamed. We start to lose a lot of self-respect, and we start to build lots of shame and lots of guilt. And that in turn leads to lower levels of self-confidence. We start to, when we're in the throes of that relationship with alcohol, we start to feel like a terrible person, like we're a really bad person, like we've got something to be ashamed of, like we're out of control. And when we first stop drinking, we haven't miraculously got rid of those feelings of shame and guilt. Those feelings of shame and guilt and that low self-respect and that low self-confidence, even symptoms of poor mental health like depression and anxiety, all of those things are still up there. They're still high. They're still within us. And so our focus tends to be on the bits of ourselves that we see as a problem, the bits of ourselves that we dislike. And we don't particularly want to share that with other people. So when I see where's your focus, the best way to kind of explain that is to imagine yourself as a kind of 3D jigsaw puzzle. So imagine a 3D jigsaw puzzle that's U-shaped, and that's made up of lots of different pieces, lots of different parts. And what tends to happen when we first stop drinking and we're in the early days of learning to live our lives alcohol free is that we tend to focus on only those little bits of the puzzle that are causing us shame and guilt. The little bits of that puzzle that make it look like we have a problem or we had a problem and we've got something to be ashamed of. And the thing is, if those are the bits we're focusing on and we're not seeing all the other bits of the puzzle, then those are the bits that we're going to see more of. And we don't particularly want to share. If we're only seeing those little bits of us that kind of make us feel like we're a problem, we don't particularly want to share that with other people. So even though we've stopped drinking and we're doing something good about ourselves, by acknowledging that we're stopping drinking, we're also kind of acknowledging that we think we had a bit of a problem, and we don't particularly want to share that we had a problem with other people because we're seeing ourselves as this really terrible person because we're only focusing on those one or two bits of ourselves that kind of give us the evidence to back up our belief that we're a really terrible person. We're focusing on the problem and we don't want to share with other people that we think that we have a problem. I hope that makes sense. Of course, the reality is different. So, what we pay attention to is what we get more of. So, if we're focusing on just those one or two parts of us, just those bits of the puzzle that are things to be ashamed of, we're going to get more of that. We're going to see more evidence to support our belief about ourselves that we are a problem. We're a terrible person. We need to feel guilty. We need to be ashamed. If we're just focusing on that one piece or those couple of pieces, we're going to see more of them, more evidence to support those beliefs. Whereas other people are seeing a fuller picture. They are seeing more of the other pieces and the other parts that make up this puzzle that is us. So other people are not just seeing those little parts of us. In fact, they might not be seeing those parts at all because you might have hidden them so well. I know certainly for me in my drinking days, I did a really good job of hiding that I had a problem or that I thought I had a problem. So other people didn't even know. Even those nearest and dearest to me, even those closest to me, didn't know how much shame I felt, how much guilt I felt, how much I was destroying my self-respect through believing really bad things about myself because of my relationship with drink. Nobody knew because I hid it so well. Um, and even the people who you share with, who you share that you have a problem with, they're going to see more of you than just that part of you. They're going to be seeing the full picture, or at least a fuller picture. They're going to be seeing the other parts of you. They're going to be seeing the part of you that's a great leader. They're going to be seeing the part of you that shows great compassion. They're going to be seeing the part of you that shows kindness to other people. They're going to be seeing the part of you that's a fantastic parent, the loving part of you, the giving part of you. They're going to be seeing your strengths and your resources, and they're going to be paying more attention to those parts of you than you will. So the reality is that other people are not just focusing, if they're focusing at all, on those bad parts, they're also going to be focusing on the good parts. They're not going to be, I suppose another way of putting it is that you care more about the problem than anyone else. You're focusing on the problem and they're not. So it kind of gives you permission to be honest, because in sharing the fact that you've decided to make this lifestyle change, even though you're seeing it as this massive problem and it's kind of reflecting this terrible part of you and the fact that you have this terrible problem and you don't really want to be sharing that with other people, the reality is that when you share that you're making this lifestyle change by stopping drinking, other people are not seeing it as a big deal. They're not seeing it as a terrible problem or a reflection on you, because they're seeing this fuller picture. They're seeing all of the good parts of you as well as all of the bad. So you care about it more than they do. And that's the reality. So going back to the original question, is honesty the best policy? There isn't a one size fits all answer. I would say it is a good policy to be honest with people when you're ready, when you're feeling comfortable about doing it, or even when you're not, because it can be quite a therapeutic thing to do, to push yourself out of your comfort zone and to experiment a bit and to get curious about what happens if you do be honest with people. What do you notice about people's reactions? To do a little bit of experimenting, and to kind of distance yourself from it, and to do a little bit of, investigation. What happens when I tell people that I've stopped drinking? What reactions are they going to give? Get really curious about it, and it can give you the courage to be honest. However, I will temper that by giving you permission to not. If you want to give people excuses, if you don't feel ready to be honest with people, that's fine too. You've got to do what works for you, what makes you feel good, what makes you feel positive, what gives you most confidence. You've got to do what works for you. And there's no one size fits all here. It's different things work for different people. What I will say though is that the longer you stay sober, the more distance you put between those old drunken behaviours, the less you feel guilt and shame, the more your self-respect grows, therefore the more your self-confidence grows. And in turn, your mental and emotional health improves as well. And the more good you're feeling about yourself, the less of a problem it appears to be, the more distance you've put between yourself and the old problem, and the less of a big deal it becomes to share about it. So you do find over time that you become more confident about telling people that you've made this lifestyle choice. And if you think about it, it is just a lifestyle choice. It's just the same as somebody deciding they're going to stop smoking. Why would somebody feel guilt and shame and a little bit concerned about sharing with other people that they were doing something healthy for their body? Why would that be a big deal that somebody had decided to stop smoking? Why would it be a big deal to decide you were cutting sugar out of your diet because you wanted to lead a healthier lifestyle. We wouldn't put ourselves through the same trauma and the same mental anguish about sharing that we make other healthy lifestyle choices, or that we're going to start an exercise regime, we're going to take up a sport or engage in some fitness, or we're going to start practicing kindness on a daily basis and do one act of kindness every day. These kind of lifestyle choices don't cause us any anguish at all. In fact, we can feel quite proud of them, and we can feel quite proud of sharing them with other people. However, when it comes to telling people that we are stopping drinking and that we have decided to live life alcohol free, we kind of put ourselves through this mental turmoil and this mental anguish. And I think it's partly to do with the fact that although alcohol is a terrible, poisonous, toxic drug, society doesn't portray it as such. Society sells it to us. Society wants us to be drinking because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. All of the same can be said of smoking. But we're kind of taught from a very early age, culturally, it's the norm, it's acceptable, it's even encouraged that we need to drink to unwind, we need to drink to relax, we need to drink to have a good time, we need to drink to socialise and bond with our friends. So we get a lot of messages from society at large about the importance of drinking in our culture. And so that can make it feel a little bit odd that we're deciding not to do that, a little bit outside of maybe our peer groups and our friendship groups. But I don't think it's just that, because the same can be said about smoking, or certainly a few decades ago, the same could be said about smoking. There's a lot more, I guess, with smoking, there is a lot more of a cultural push to stop people from smoking now that we haven't yet got with alcohol. So there is a difference there. However, what I would also argue is that there are traditional, historical, unhelpful beliefs about alcohol and people who develop an unhealthy relationship with alcohol that just aren't there with smoking, that just aren't there with people who eat lots of sugar or drink lots of sugary drinks, that there is a kind of stigma attached to people who have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol that just isn't attached to other substances that we might misuse. With drugs and alcohol, I think there's a kind of stigma there. And that can lead to this double sense of shame about the fact that if we're admitting that we're going sober, we're also admitting that we had a problem. And that's the bit that we don't want to own up to, because at some subliminal, subconscious level, we're believing some of these stereotypes about, people who have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol or drugs are somehow bad people in some kind of way. Well, I want to here and now just bust that myth wide open. It's just not true. And even if we might at a subconscious level be, holding on to some of those myths that make us feel ashamed to have developed an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, I hereby give you permission to let go of those. It's no bigger a deal saying that you are living life alcohol free than it is saying you are living your life sugar free or meat free or plastic free, or that you are making you're making a commitment to doing some form of physical activity every day. You're making a commitment to drinking alcohol free drinks every day. You don't have to categorize things any differently to that. You can make it easier on yourself. It's simply a healthy lifestyle choice. And in the early days of stopping drinking, it's understandable for all the reasons I've just explained why you might not feel that way, why you might feel like it's a bigger deal than it actually is. But as time goes by, you will come to see it as no bigger a deal than any of those other healthy lifestyle changes that you wouldn't feel ashamed about. So the more your self-respect returns, let me just check my notes. I feel like I've gone off at a bit of a tangent. The more your self-respect returns, the more your confidence grows, the more you see yourself as a whole person, and you're seeing more of that 3D jigsaw, the less you see yourself as a problem, the easier it is to be honest, because you're not ashamed and you're starting to feel good about yourself. And interestingly, what I've discovered, and what some of you in the group are already discovering when you're being honest with people, is that people's reactions are, I don't know, one of three different things. Either they see your honesty as an open door that gives them permission to talk about their own issues with alcohol and the fact they really want to stop drinking themselves, and they start talking about their relationship with alcohol. So it's an open door to discuss themselves and alcohol. Or they react with curiosity and they might ask you questions about it, although I have very rarely come across that. Or, and this is by far the most likely, it's a non-event. They don't question it. It's usually one of the two. They start opening up about their own drinking behaviours, or it's a non-event and they don't question it. On the very rare occasions that people try and question you and put some pressure on you to drink, that normally says a lot about their own relationship with alcohol. If somebody is putting pressure on you to drink, it's because they're not comfortable with you not drinking. And why wouldn't they be comfortable with you not drinking? Well, they wouldn't be comfortable with you not drinking because they feel more comfortable if you're drinking alongside them. And the reason they would feel more comfortable with you drinking alongside them is that they feel some kind of self-consciousness or guilt about their own drinking. And it makes them feel better if they've got other people drinking in the same amounts at the same speed as they are. Just like I used to, just like possibly you used to. You feel better about yourself when you've got other people drinking in similar patterns to you, because it makes you feel like you're less of a problem, you've got less of a problem. So if you've got people putting you under pressure to drink, just remember that this says more about their relationship with alcohol than it does about you. And you don't need to feel bad about that. That's not your issue, that's their issue. You're never on your own either with not drinking. When you start opening up and you start being honest with people about, oh no, I've decided to cut alcohol out of my life, whether you say it's just for now or it's for life or whatever, you don't need to go into any detail you don't want to go into. It's enough to say, I'm not drinking this evening, or I'm not drinking for a while. That's enough to say, and you're never on your own. You will always notice other people in the room who are also not drinking. So going back to the original question, is honesty the best policy? It is the best policy when you're ready. It is the best policy generally. It's never as much of a big deal as you think it is. You're the only one who cares about it. Other people don't tend to care. So it's never as big a deal as you think it's going to be. And it's often a non-event to other people. You're the one who cares about it. Other people don't. So it can be quite an interesting experiment to actually put yourself out there and to get honest with people, just to test their reactions and notice what happens. But importantly, I'd advise that if you were going to do that, that you feel confident enough to do that. Make sure that you're confident to do that in advance of doing it. I don't want to, I would hate for you to put yourselves under any stress, any undue stress with that. And let me know, for those of you that already have started getting honest with people about the fact you're not drinking, let me know, what have people's reactions and responses been? I would love to hear that, because I'd love to hear what your experiences with that are. So do post in the comments below. I will look forward to catching up with you in tomorrow's Saturday share in the Go Get Sober Facebook group. If you're not already there, come along and say hello. I'll look forward to catching up with you then. But in the meantime, let's go get sober together. Bye for now.